Okay, now right now one of the main topics in the city of Allentown is the proposed incinerator. Okay, what is making this a main topic other than the obvious? What else? Other than as far as like the pollution, I mean, what other aspects make this a main topic?
What other aspects? Well, burning anything to create energy is the least efficient and most expensive method of creating energy. So when Delta Thermal Energy calls the incinerator, the proposed incinerator, a waste-to-energy project, what we know about the statistics of creating energy through incineration is we call it a waste-of-energy project. Because Allentown has signed a 35-year contract to import to make sure that there's 150 tons a day of garbage to be burned, and Allentown doesn't even have that much garbage. They're going to be required to import it.
Did you want more coffee?
No.
Water? Nothing?
No, nothing. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, they did that. So it's actually going to require like truck traffic bringing the garbage to the facility, which they say is better than truck traffic driving to the landfills, but you have to consider the amount of population we're dealing with. We have this site right in the middle of a highly populated area. So they're not really going to make that much energy from it. All the stuff that they're going to be burning, a lot of it will potentially be like recyclables that didn't get pulled out or whatever. They said they're going to pull the metal out, but a lot of things will get burned, like food scraps that could have been composted. We have the statistics on, if you look at how many jobs are created doing composting and recycling instead of burning an entire waste stream, it's a lot more jobs. So it's kind of like waste of energy and waste of jobs.
Now,
a lot of potential gets burned when they burn the trash and the sewage sludge.
I'll be honest with you, I thought incinerators were a thing of the past.
I thought so too.
I thought incinerators were a dinosaur.
Well, this is a new experimental technology. They have a very small scale of the kind of plant that they've proposed here running in Japan, but it's not the full scale. So whatever
it's like a beta version.
Data, projections that they're feeding us, it's not the full scale. So I'm not sure how reliable that really is.
But they didn't think to multiply that. I mean, that's common sense too. It's a small scale. Let's multiply the numbers to get the actual projections.
They probably did, but let's just say in real life, there's nowhere running of this size that they can actually say what it's going to be from. So some of their data may be kind of optimistic or slightly scrubbed. It's hard to say.
Statistics can be easily manipulated.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Now, one of the main part of this though is actually the fact that they weren't trying to put that to public vote though. They were that's like part of the main part of this though. It's not just the incinerator, but the fact that the people aren't being given a say in this, correct?
Right. I mean, the way it normally goes, it doesn't always mean because a project is proposed that people would have to vote on it. But because Allentown has a home rule charter, and we saw this coming down the pike, Energy Justice Network, and the founder and leader of that, Mike Ewald, who is also our lawyer and litigator, he drafted the Clean Air Ordinance that we got all the signatures from, and he said, well, they proposed this project, but if we preemptively pass a Clean Air Ordinance with certain levels, putting caps on the amount of pollution that any potential facility would give off, then we could make it unattractive for the investors and unattractive for them to go through with this project economically, and they would give up. So yeah, that was our strategy. Using Allentown's home rule charter, you all drafted a Clean Air Ordinance, and our goal by getting the signatures, the proper number of signatures that were verified by the city clerk, was to get it on the ballot as what we call a ballot initiative. It's a law that it's a proposed law ordinance that the people brought to the ballot to be voted on, which makes sense to enfranchise we the people of the city of Allentown with democratic due process to allow them a role in the decision making of a project that will heavily influence this community.
Okay.
So that made sense. That was our goal. But we've been blocked ballot access by the Lehigh County Board of Elections. They refused to put it on the ballot. They didn't cite a law or regulation. They simply said that they vaguely thought that what we proposed was in conflict with DEP somehow, even though the Pennsylvania law clearly states that a municipality such as Allentown has every right in the state, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to pass a clean air ordinance that is stricter than state standards. So we appealed to the Lehigh County Court of Common Pleas. It's kind of a political hot potato because the mayor of Allentown, Ed Pulaski, actually lobbied to bring this project to Allentown. So it's like his pet project, right? Which is corporate cronies, making good business for Allentown at the expense of our air and people downwind and downriver in Bethlehem who don't even have a say in it conveniently. So she really didn't want to be the one to say, oh yes, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the ballot knowing that everybody else was against it. So she basically issued a decision on a Monday, and she didn't issue the opinion until a Wednesday. And she kind of rehashed the same vague stuff that the Lehigh County Board of Elections gave us, which really didn't have a solid basis in law whatsoever. So we appealed to the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, and they refused to review the ordinance on its merits. Instead, they denied us on some grounds that have to do with mandamus, which I'm not technically completely qualified to explain. So Mike Ewald has redrafted the ordinance into something a little closer to many laws that are already on the books, so it would be less controversial. And our goal is to get over 2,000 signatures on Election Day. So the Clean Air Ordinance that we originally got the signatures for, and that's currently still in kind of legal limbo, will not be on the ballot. So we have a new Clean Air Ordinance that's been drafted by Mike Ewald, and we're trying to get enough signatures to get that on the next ballot, which would be in the spring.
Okay.
So we're not sure if Delta Thermo Energy is going to beat us and get all their permits. They still lack the air permit, and they lack their waste permit. So if we can stall those permits long enough until we get to the ballot in the spring, then we can stop this thing from being built. We're pursuing multiple avenues that I'm not at liberty to discuss all the details of, but we have plans.
Now, how realistically,
yes.
Okay, how much would this increase the pollution level versus like in any given city where you already have high pollution levels from vehicles, and traffic coming, going through the city? Realistically, how much more of a danger would this pose to city health, to the citizens' health, versus what's already there?
That's an excellent question, and I'm not a scientist, so I can't really sit here and spit statistics at you for that, but all I can tell you is that the Lehigh Valley area is already number 11 for respiratory illness in the United States, and it's number 14 for heavy particulate pollution. So any further stresses on the air quality in this valley, where things tend to stay settled in the valley, which makes it a problem, is really not worth the risk to public health. I keep talking to business owners, some in Allentown, but a lot in Bethlehem, since in Bethlehem, even if this would be on the ballot, Bethlehem people aren't enfranchised, but we live 5 miles downriver and downwind. And Bethlehem business owners have been extremely receptive to the gospel that I'm bringing, that public health is good for local business, that when parents are running their kids to the hospital or buying inhalers or spending money on prescription drugs for their children's ill health, that they're not spending money at your local, they're not patronizing your local business. So my whole question is, why even lobby actively to bring a polluter the fact that you have to get a permit from DEP, what a permit is a license to pollute. Let's get this straight. It means that they get a free pass to do something that would be a criminal activity for anyone else. All right? If I wanted to put mercury into the air, it would put me in jail. But because Delta Thermal Energy is applying for a permit, they actually get a license to pollute. So let's get this straight. If they were not going to be polluters, they would not need any permits. There would be no permits involved if there was no pollution involved. So I say that since they have to get a license to pollute in this area, that why should we be welcoming polluting businesses into the Lehigh Valley at all? We already are number 11 and number 14, for those that danger zone for bad air and respiratory illness. Do we really want to break that ugly top 10? I say let's not.
But aren't there, even going back over the past couple decades, where the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, is constantly passing especially with our generation and beyond, everything going green, where it's like there's more stricter and stricter regulations on everything from nuclear power plants on down, at least on the books. Now, whether or not they have the manpower to enforce them is a different story. But so therefore, wouldn't this incinerator have to go by those same laws and regulations, and future ones that may be passed to further enforce safer, non-polluting, less polluting air quality and water? Or am I off base here?
This is how it was explained to me, that because this facility is experimental in nature, by the fact that they want to burn trash and sewage sludge, that there is not one in operation in the United States anywhere like this. They have a small scale model in Japan off of which they're basing their projections. The way it was explained to me was that when they went to the DEP, they said, "We're an experimental facility, so would you please give us really low standards?" And the DEP said, "Okay." And then they went back and said, "You know what? Can you just make them a little lower, please?" And I heard that is what happened. So that's a very non-technical explanation, but that's the way it was explained to me, that they got very weak standards. Now they're making a public presentation last night trying to tell us how absolutely clean their stuff is, but if it's like totally clean, then they wouldn't need pollution permits, so air pollution permits. As well as water. They've got their water. They have their wastewater permit, and they still need the general waste permit.
Okay.
So, and actually, I think it's way oversimplification to say that progressively regulations are getting tighter. I don't think so.
At least that was my understanding, because everything's going green. Everything's going green now.
Well, that's a nice trend that you can see in some places, but the polluting, the status quo polluting industries that have a grip on this country, they aren't going to go easily and go quietly into that good night. They want to basically, they'd rather burn all the fossil fuels that they have in reserve and cook the planet than give up their business plan. I don't know.
One of the primary is the automobile industry that's still holding on to the...
It's the fossil fuel economy, baby. That's what it is, So here they are, they're saying, oh, well, we're not using fossil fuels, but they use natural gas to run the plant. Now, natural gas comes from fracking. So I mentioned at the DEP meeting last night that while we're using natural gas to run that plant, that means that they're causing pain and suffering, water degradation, air quality problems, and public health sacrifices somewhere else in another community in Pennsylvania. So whenever we're using fracked natural gas, which is what's coming out of the Marcellus Shale, we're causing pain and suffering in other communities. And I know those people. I've been there. I know what's going on.
Out of all the fossil fuels, though, isn't natural gas one of the most dangerous to use because of the volatility of it?
It's true.
Outside
there are all kinds of explosions of natural gas infrastructure, natural gas facilities. Yeah,
I know it's one of the main reasons why a lot of houses have switched, are electric, because of the volatility of it.
Right.
Compared
It's
to
true.
in the 50s.
Like for example,
1950s. Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
You know, compared to like in the 50s when the houses were built, then we had a lot of we had a lot of gas, whereas now so much of it's electric because of the volatility of the natural gas.
That's definitely a problem. There are compressor stations all over Pennsylvania that have absolutely just exploded. You know, like I have friends up in Hot Bottom, Pennsylvania, and less than a mile from their house, the compressor station just blew the hell up, you know? And it's like living in a war zone. This is not cool. I've seen videos of like clean natural gas vehicles like exploding when you're filling them. It's very dangerous. It's just like all the natural gas infrastructure here in Allentown under the pipes underneath.
The gas explosion a couple of years ago.
They're all like 90 years old.
The gas explosion a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it was less than 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was because I was back in that was after I came back into the year in 2010.
Yeah.
And even though everybody ignores it, when you're pumping regular gasoline, they tell you don't use the cell phone because
exactly a spark. Yeah.
So
we can never underestimate the inherent explosiveness and dangers of
Now, let's say somebody who doesn't live in Allentown wants to support this and try to say, hey, look, even though we don't, like you said about Bethlehem, how could they help out even though they don't live in Allentown?
Okay, all right. Here are the ways.
I mean, Allentown, anybody who lives in Allentown, that's obvious. But,
right.
People living in Bethlehem, or even if something like this would happen in another state,
right?
Like something like this would happen in another city, another state. How could they, and people say, okay, look, we don't want this. There are other ways. Mm-hmm. How can they help out?
Okay. The umbrella nonprofit that works for environmental justice on all kinds of issues such as this that is running our campaign is called Energy Justice Network, and it's energyjustice.net. I've got to check on that.
Well, send me the link so I can include it.
I will. So the Citizens Campaign right now is called Allentown Residents for Clean Air. If you are on social media, please look up Allentown Residents for Clean Air.
I think God's on social media now.
We have a group, and I have a profile too, so you'll find us one of those ways. The website is called stoptheburn.org. Stoptheburn.org. So that is the official website for Allentown Residents for Clean Air. Say you live in Bethlehem and you're downwind, downriver, and you're concerned, please get in touch with me. My name is Juile Edgar. You can find me under my full name on Facebook, and I'm the coordinator for this group for the time being through the election, maybe a little bit afterwards, and we'll see what happens. Please feel free to just reach out to me. Find me on Facebook. My email address is julie@safewatersociety.org. My phone number is 484-557-4182. And we'll be happy to tell you some ways you can get on board. We are fighting a legal battle. I hate to say it, people, but we need money. Stoptheburn.org/donate. You can mail it, drive it in, donate via PayPal. You can donate online. Anything from a token, skip your next Starbucks and give us $5 to, a more generous $50 or $100 or whatever you can afford if you really believe in community health and just beating these polluters and plunderers that want to come into our community and make a buck at our expense.
Okay, so even somebody in another state, what about like writing to your congressman and your local representatives? Would that help? Even people in other areas where this is
local battle.
No, but I'm saying if this would pop up in other areas where, because the magazine's online, so it's seen by people all over the world.
Right.
Or even like people that want to fight pollution in other areas. So even things like writing your local, from the local level on up, that always helps too, right? As far as contacting your representatives.
It's a starting point. To fight a super local battle like this, often you need like a specialized organization like Energy Justice Network that they do this work. When somebody wants to put a dirty, polluting facility in some poor neighborhood or somewhere in your community or whatever, You know, you need a specialized strategy to beat that.